I'm very suspicious of that. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. And a little while back, Luxinda got in touch with us and made me aware that there's a material out there that's just been released that I had absolutely no idea about. And it's something I'm super excited about. So thank you, Luxinda, for bringing this to my attention because... oh my god, it's so heavy. I had to get some. I got 10 kilograms of it. And it looks like it's going to be similar to when I did Jesmonite. However, like Luxinda said in the message, this stuff is completely different. Because with this stuff, you actually use water to activate it. And if you remember with that Jesmonite stuff, there was a lot of maths involved. There was a lot of percentages of dry mixture and their liquid stuff. And this stuff here, I think is quite forgiving. I don't think this is particularly something you can really screw up, although I probably could. But the average person, I don't think they could. And the main reason I wanted to test this out is because if you're familiar with resin, and apparently this is basically a resin compound. I don't think it's like a proper resin. Well, obviously it's not a proper resin. But if you know resin-based materials, when you're mixing them and when they're going through the casting process, it hates water. If you get water into your resin while you're casting, you cast it, it'll never harden. And if I'm putting my money on it now, I have a feeling that this stuff is going to be similar to plaster of Paris. And I'm hoping it's different to plaster of Paris. But I feel like it might be exactly that. And I've just been sold something that isn't actually real. But they can't do that. People aren't allowed to do that. They can't sell plaster of Paris and tell us it's something different. Well, that's illegal.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're gonna need some back.
Okay, so the first thing I wanted to try with this stuff is like a little experiment doing 6 different kinds of casting with it, just to see how it performs and the different results and stuff. So I've got a little snowflake mold here, because it's close to Christmas, it's fine. So this is the thing that stands out to me, and which I find very exciting, is it says that a guide powder to water mix ratio is 100 to 35, 2.8 to 1, e.g. 100 grams of powder to 35 grams of water. However, it also says the above is a guide ratio only. It can be changed to alter the desired viscosity and tailored to application. So that basically means you can wing it. You don't need to measure it. You don't need to be perfect with it because it's still gonna set. That's what I'm reading from this. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. So I'm just very excited not to have to calculate stuff. So apparently I'm gonna be mixing this and it needs to become creamy and lump free. And some more important information. It's gonna harden within 60 to 90 minutes and then you can demold it, but allowed to dry for 24 to 48 hours to reach optimum cured strength. And this powder stuff, apparently, it says on here, the shelf life is indefinite when kept 100% dry in storage. So you could have this in your studio for absolutely ever and it never go off. And that, well, that's just, it's very thrilling. Because I do like to keep things. I've still got that bucket of Jesmonite. That's probably out of date now, but I've still got it.
That heater has been around for 5 years.
I just picked it up.
I've got old tins of resin that are definitely expired. They need to be thrown away, but I just haven't. I've just kept them. I need to stop keeping things, I know. Don't tell us. And with this stuff as well, apparently any pigments can work, so you can put paint in, mica powders, inks, all sorts, which we're going to be trying out. We're going to be testing that. And I think that's it really. I think I kind of understand what this is about. Right, let's open you up, see what you like. Oh my god, I'm so weak. Bloody hell, they seal this well. Okay, so it's in a bag here, and I don't think it mentioned anything on here about wearing gloves. Not that I would have read it anyway. There's actually no health and safety information on here, which I kind of like, to be fair, because I'm not a fan of health and safety. However, I would say this is a powder, so if you want to wear a mask just in case, then, you know, go for it. You do you. I couldn't give a shit about my lungs. I smoked for over 10 years. My lungs are screwed anyway. There's no scoop or anything, so I'll have to get the studio spoon. So you're looking for more powder than water. It's almost like 1/3 water, 2/3 powder. Nah, that's fine. I can guess. So just add some of this stuff in here. I was gonna sniff it there just to see what it smelled like, but obviously that's very irresponsible. Don't do that. By the way, if you're wondering as well, this only cost me about 40 quid, which might sound expensive, but when it comes to resins and stuff, I think that's really affordable. So we need some water in. I'll probably just go for about that much. And just give this a mix. I'm just wondering whether this is plaster of Paris. It doesn't say, it says water activated casting compound. Do you think I've bought plaster of Paris? I can't have. This can't be plaster of Paris. Just, it feels like plaster of Paris. Because I suppose actually, it hasn't said anything about resin.
Well done.
It just says aquacast. That could technically mean plaster of Paris. No, it's not plaster of Paris. It can't be because it says aquacast is an eco-friendly, polymer-enhanced casting molding material. So it might be that this is kind of like a plaster of Paris, but it's also got like a built-in resin compound kind of thing. Polymer-based. I don't know really what a polymer is. I'm talking as if I know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what a polymer compound is. But it could be that this is plaster of Paris with a secret special ingredient and it makes it a little bit more plasticky. My first test, obviously, I want to just add it plain, just completely neat, and see what this is like. I don't know how thin or how thick I'm supposed to be going with it, but I think that'll be alright. Now with this exact same batch, I'm going to add some red alcohol ink and see what that does. Also keep in mind that this is a white material, so any pigments that you're going to put in, it's obviously going to give it a pastel-y finish, I assume. You're not going to be able to get deep saturated colours. I don't think you are anyway. So I'll pour that one into here. Okay, so I've got a second batch of this stuff mixed up, and I just wanted to mention that with this one, the alcohol ink one, I don't think it's going to work because I'm looking at it and I'm pretty sure I can see a layer of alcohol ink on the top of the whatever this stuff is. I don't think that's actually going to be coloured. I think it's going to have just a layer of ink over the top of it. I might be completely wrong, but I don't know, I'm very suspicious of that. But anyway, for another two, I thought we'd use some mica powders. And before anyone says anything, I know I pronounce mica wrong, but I think mica powder sounds better in your mouth. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to pronounce it mica powder, but that just sounds boring to me. Someone's told us I've pronounced it wrong before and I don't care. I call it mica powder. Right, so the first mica powder one I want to do, I got for a nice bluey green colour, and I just want to paint this inside the mould. I've just realised, once I've done this, that I haven't dried this mould out properly. It's very wet inside. Never mind. Right, I think that'll be good. And then just pour our mixture into there. And then apparently you can actually colour this with the actual mica powder. So I'll go for yellow. Right, so pop a bit of this mica powder into here and give that a mix. Okay, there's another two done. Okay, so for these two batches, I want to try mixing one with acrylic paint. Also, I'm just saying, this red one, I think it's getting even worse. And I'm pretty sure, in fact, I'm almost 100% sure that the alcohol ink is just sitting on top of this. So it wasn't that red when I poured it. It was like a pinky colour. It did say you could use ink, but it didn't specify what kind of ink. And it might be that you're just not allowed to use alcohol ink with it. But it did say I could use acrylic paint, so let's give this one a bash. The paint seems to have gone a little bit lumpy. Doesn't seem to be dissolving into the material. You can actually buy dedicated pigments and stuff from this company that's specifically used for this. But it did say you could use like different things like paints and all sorts. So there's no reason why this shouldn't work. Oh, there, we're getting there. Just it takes a lot of mixing. This one might have a few like flicks of paint in. I think I put too much paint in it. We'll see how it turns out. Oh, it's so lumpy. It might look nice, it might be like a really cool effect. My other idea, I wanted to use alcohol inks again, but I don't know whether I should now. At the end of the day, I would rather try it and experiment with it, so you at home don't need to, and don't need to waste your time to figure out whether it works or not. So my idea for this one is I want to add some alcohol ink into here, but I'm not going to mix it. I'm just going to have some like random floating colours. I'm going to go for a bit of blue and a bit of yellow. I'm only going to add a few drops. I'm not going to add as much as I did last time. That's a bit of a mouthful. Yeah, I've added about 7 drops of each colour. Last time I added about half the tube into that red one, and that might be why it's floating to the top. Right, and then pour this in just like that. Okay, so there's 6 little experiments. Remind me later on which one's which, because I will forget. Okay, and for my final test, I thought I would actually make something. So I bought this soap dish mold, and I've just got it out the wrapper, and I was thinking, oh, that's gonna be weird to like pour your stuff in there and make like a soap dish. But that's not the correct way you pour it. You pour it in that side. I'm almost sure I pour it into this side and not that side. It's quite confusing. I'm glad I thought about that before I did it, because otherwise I would have literally poured the stuff into the top, and that's wrong. It's this way. Right, so for this idea, I want to use acrylic paint again, and I'm going to add some black into this. My original idea for this one was to use alcohol ink, but like I said, I don't think alcohol ink's going to be fantastic, so I'd rather stick to paint. I'm also just looking at the other ones that I've already done, and they all seem to have like a layer of water or like a liquid on top of them, and I don't know whether that's normal. I'm assuming it might evaporate or something. A lot of things happen in the casting process, and a lot of things change, so you can just never tell. Right, so that's fully mixed in, and it's gone grey, and I didn't want it to be grey, but I didn't think of that, did I? Because my idea was to make a black liquid and then add some white into it and create like a faux marble effect. Oh, actually, mica powder might work. No, mica powder won't work. Or will it work? It might work. Oh, I don't know what to do. I think I'll use mica powder, why not? So I'm going to add a couple of these colours in and just sprinkle them over the top. Oh no, I don't want grey. Have I got a black? Yeah, I don't want any more grey in this. I'll add some black and white into this grey, and I'm not going to mix it in. I'm just going to leave it floating on the top and hope it still creates, I don't know, like a, oh, balls. I've just spilled that all over us. Anyway, I'm hoping it creates a marbled kind of effect, and then I'm just going to pour it into here, and we'll see what happens with this. Oh, I didn't like that big lump that just flopped off. Oh, that was so lumpy. Oh. I have no idea what that's going to look like, but I don't think it's going to look very good. They were just like massive chunks of mica powder, and they literally just slopped off into there. We'll see though. I might have like reinvented the wheel. I don't think I have, but I might have. Okay, so I'm going to leave these to set. I think it said about an hour or an hour and a half or something, and we'll demold them, see what's worked, see what hasn't worked, and fingers crossed everything's worked. You know, it might be one of them days where literally all of my ideas have worked. Okay, so it's time to get my little experiments out of the molds, and they're fully set, they're fully hard. That's kind of what they're looking like on the bottom, and they're looking very lumpy, I have to admit. Now, before I get into this, I have just looked online on their website, and they did specify with the inks, which I didn't read, obviously, that you're supposed to use water-based inks. So if this one here's worked, it's just been an accident, been a happy accident. Anyway, let's take the one that I did nothing with out the mold, see what this is looking like. Okay, so that's quite nice. It's surprisingly got a lot of detail, and it's very, very smooth. It's got like a few little bubbles on the sides and a few little imperfections, but it's not too bad. The texture of this definitely reminds me of plaster of Paris, but I know it's not plaster of Paris because I know what the feeling of plaster of Paris is. Plaster of Paris, it's very kind of powdery. This is almost, not necessarily plasticky, but you can feel like there's something else inside it. It feels similar to Jesmonite, but it doesn't feel as strong as Jesmonite. Like, I've got my little pot I made with Jesmonite here, and this feels a bit more like hard, a bit more ceramic feeling, whereas this feels a bit softer. They're similar, but there's also some little differences between them. I can't quite put my finger on it. And also, I was reading online that this material, it's porous, so if you were wanting something that was waterproof, so like my little soap dish, I would need to seal that in with a varnish. Anyway, let's see what this alcohol ink one's like. Alright, okay. It's surprisingly worked better than I thought. Let me just do a transfer test, see if any of this red's going to get on here. A little bit, but not as much as I thought. So there it is. It's surprisingly, it really doesn't look as bad as I thought. I thought this was going to be all white, and there was just going to be a puddle of alcohol ink on the top. I don't know whether you can see that, but you can kind of see where it's darker, and then it goes lighter. And I think that's because, well, I don't know why it's done that. Something to do with the alcohol ink. Right, next up, what did I do with this one? I can't remember. Oh, this was mica powder, but brushed on the inside of the mold. That one hasn't turned out very well. It looks okay on camera, but in person it doesn't look as good. And I think the reason this one doesn't look particularly great is because my mould was wet when I applied the mica powder inside. So that was my own fault. I think this would have turned out better if my mould had been completely dry. Right, so this one was mica powder mixed in. I think this one's worked the best actually. So if we look at that, the colour's very consistent. It's obviously a very pale yellow, but the detail, I don't think there's any imperfections, or if there are some imperfections, they're very, very subtle. It's the best so far. The bottom obviously needs sanding and fixing because it looks a bit like the moon, doesn't it? But the rest of it's really good actually. Right, time for some acrylic paint one. I think this one hasn't worked very well because I can already see on the surface of this that these big blobs of paint are still wet. They haven't dried at all. So the front of it looks pretty normal, it looks fine, but then when you get around the outsides, you can see all those little pockets of acrylic paint that haven't mixed in very well, and they're just still wet. So I think if you're going to use acrylic paint, make sure it's fully mixed in before you actually pour it into your mold. And then this one, I honestly, I can't even remember what I did with this one. No, this one was alcohol ink, wasn't it? But not mixed in. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Let's have a look. Oh, this one's turned out really good. But I'm pretty sure I used a yellow, and there's no yellow in it, it's just blue. But I really like that design. It's very kind of like marbled, isn't it? That's turned out shockingly well, considering you're not supposed to use alcohol inks with them. Like that, look at that front. That's well nice. Okay, and the final piece is my little soap dish. Let's see how this has gone. I hope this has turned out alright. So this is what this soap dish would look like. You'd place it like that, have your soap on here, and then like all the water would drain off on that little bit. Honestly, it's reminding us of something from like Star Trek or something. It's definitely got like a Star Trek vibe to it. I don't know whether I'm the only one who thinks that, but it's turned out okay. It kind of looks like a fake concrete, and that's kind of the dish pattern there. It looks interesting, it looks different. There are definitely still some pockets where I think possibly the mica powder or the acrylic paints kind of got stuck there, or like an air bubble or something, but it's not like shockingly bad. It's not gonna like ruin the piece. It definitely needs a good varnish because I'm getting a lot of transfer onto my fingers from the mica powders. But other than that, I think that's quite nice. I think that's kind of what I was going for. But hopefully I have enjoyed this little experimentation day. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And a big thanks to Luxinda for suggesting I try this material out. When I was researching before, I've realized that Luxinda has posted a couple of videos on this material and tried a few other things out with it. So feel free to check her videos out. And if you come across any materials, art materials, casting materials, resin stuff, anything like that, feel free to leave your suggestions in the comments below. It might take me ages to get around to doing them, but I do eventually, sometimes, get round to doing them. And I'll see you next week for a brand new video.